High Noon continues now on 590 The Fan.
I've been around a lot of these guys. I mean, I worked college basketball for an extensive period of time. I've seen college programs. I spent time with Nick Saban. I went down to Clemson. I've been out to Texas A&M. I've seen the amount of oversight and control that coaches have into their programs. Coach K had student managers that clocked whether we made to classes on time, Freddie, on campus, whether we made it to our classes on time, yet alone what was happening in the locker room or in the showers. For him to not have any idea or have any clue to what was occurring is beyond me. I don't know how you don't.
All right, that was Jay Williams' take this morning on ESPN Radio.
Which was kind of the same take. Well, what he's looking at is a situation, and unfortunately, really horrific circumstances, but that seems to be the Joe Paterno nothing to see here kind of stuff, which is, it's not good. It's a horrible look. And for something, if it's a one-time incident, could a coach not hear about it? Yeah. But we're talking about Northwestern football and the hazing that apparently went on for years and years and was clearly a part of the culture. Whether you want to say, oh, it wasn't bad, they were just teasing, or you want to say, it's horrible, I was raped. I don't know you can read as many stories as you want to read, and I don't know what it is, but I know that he knew about it.
You believe that Pat Fitzgerald knew about it?
He knew that there were. Now, every detail, I agree. Head coaches, they're control freaks, especially in football, but really in every sport. Control freaks. If they don't know about something, they find out about it, heads roll.
Yeah,
especially something that's gone a long time. Like I say, an isolated incident, okay, maybe he didn't get there. I think the difference here is that this went on apparently for a long, long period of time.
Allegedly. And that was the conclusion, I suppose, that Northwestern's leadership came to in firing Pat Fitzgerald. Mark Schipper, he is a writer, editor, and publisher, Fit Down CF College Football, and he's kind enough to give us some time here on a Tuesday afternoon. Mark, big news out of Northwestern. How you doing?
I'm good, guys. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'm actually looking down at my Chicago Tribune right now. Front page, banner headline, Fitzgerald fired amid NU scandal. So it's a big story here in Chicago where I live.
Yeah, I was reading an interesting post made by, his name is Eduardo Soto, and he worked at Northwestern football for 5 years. I believe he was on the staff in various capacities and was sort of a right-hand man for Coach Fitzgerald and sort of relating with players. And he wrote an open letter on Twitter to the president and the athletic director at Northwestern, and he defended Fitzgerald pretty intently. And, of all of the different coaches, I suppose, that I wouldn't have been shocked to read these sort of allegations or this sort of news story about, or now I'm hearing undertones of racism, which I think is way overblown. I would have never guessed that this would fall on Pat Fitzgerald. Just from seeing how his program operates, it's Northwestern. I don't know. By all account, it seemed like this was about as good of a man as you could possibly find, and now he is getting trashed out there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a shocker for certain. I've spent some time around Northwestern football and some time around Pat Fitzgerald, and he's an uber jock. He's very clean cut. He's very straightforward. He's a guy, I always said he reminded me of like a gym teacher coach if you played sports growing up. There was always that coach who was kind of your buddy. You joked around with him. But then he caught you coming in from the parking lot after lunch and you were an underclassman and he knew you didn't have a pass and he made sure you were in detention. So he was kind of that guy, like he was your buddy, he was a cool guy, but he also adhered to what, by all accounts, was a fairly strict code of conduct. So I agree with you in that it's it's a big surprise what's going on at Northwestern, a big one.
I mean, where do you fall on the line of, a coach, knowing what happens with players? Like, the only thing that's shocking to me is that, according to various players, like every single football program, the head coach meets with basically every single player as an exit interview and goes over what they need to work on for the offseason, how they would need to improve to have more playing time going into the next season, all of that. Don't you think that if these allegations were as grotesque and terrible as they have come to light, don't you think that any decent man would have put a stop to this before it got to this point? That's why it is hard for me to fathom that Fitzgerald knew about the scope of what was happening according to these allegations.
Yeah, I would think so, but I always think so in these situations, and then you're not putting yourself, one is not putting themselves in the place of being part of a team or a unit like this and the amount of pressure that comes with that and the things that are going on, particularly when an underclassman is under the power of upperclassmen. But I would say that from what I've seen at Northwestern, this is far from settled. We've had several anonymous reports detailing what happened, and we've had many more people putting their faces and names to their statements saying this is not what happened, and things have been twisted, taken out of context, distorted, exaggerated. And I think what we're trying to find here is the line, because there is a line with hazing. There's a line, and if you cross it, if you're talking about any kind of sexual acts, any type of, touching genitals, whatever it might be, any type of that stuff, you've crossed the line, and it's a serious one to cross. But there is a morale building, team building, bonding, however you want to conceptualize it, that is short of that line that I think to outsiders, to an investigative firm, to people who aren't part of units like that, appears way out of line and like something they would never involve themselves in. But in fact, it's totally mainstream and happens everywhere. So what we're looking for is the line here, and I think Fitzgerald's lawsuit is going to get us much closer than we are now. Right now, we're just seeing a feeding frenzy, and I don't think we know what happened.
Yeah, that's really a great point. And where is that line, and who decides what line to cross? I think you expressed it pretty well. That so are there gray areas maybe in that? Yeah, maybe, but you're gonna, and a university should take the high road, and if it's close to the line, that's close enough. We're not going to go over that. And so I think that those are the kinds of things that have to be reined in. They must.
Yeah, it's a very fair point. Pardon me. There's that point where you're torturing people, where you're causing people trauma, where you've gone too far, and that's where it has to stop. But I will say I don't think outsiders should be the ones to make the final judgment on that, unless you have been part of a high contact, high danger sport with a squad that you march onto the field with and do sport battle. I think that the standards for how those groups come together and hold themselves accountable to each other in a situation where serious injury is possible, where so much is on the line in front of packed stadiums of 50,000 people, and all the cylinders are firing, and you're almost in a fight or flight situation. There are standards that they hold each other to that I think outsiders would feel are inappropriate, while inside the team they feel like the things that must be done. So it's a complicated situation.
I agree that it's complicated, but I think it's important to step back and realize that sometimes players are disgruntled over certain things. And allegedly, I want to get the player's name right, who had apparently is at the forefront of this. Carl, do you have his last name off the top of your head?
I don't. Did they actually ID him? The last I saw, he was still the anonymous guy. So
I'll pull it up. But regardless, I'm thinking back to a handful of years ago, and it involved the University of Missouri in 2015 when Gary Pinkel essentially, was torn between a rock and a hard place because his football team decided to stand in protest over allegations of racism at Missouri, which ousted a university chancellor, ousted the athletic director, and then eventually took out Gary Pinkel. Now, Gary Pinkel claims that he retired from the university because of a cancer ordeal, Hodgkin's lymphoma. However, I think anybody who's pretty close to that situation understands that there were a lot of other issues facing the football program at that time. Well, you fast forward that story like 6 months, and the entire story about a swastika that was allegedly carved in feces on a player's door that was completely made up, 100% fictional. And yet there's no, there's no accountability on the reporting of that behalf, and multiple people lost their job because of it.
It's crazy.
So I think we've gotten to a point where our media, it's very bizarre to me how a university president and athletic director decided that they were going to suspend a guy for 2 weeks on a Friday, and then it catches a social media virality storm, and the coming Monday, all of a sudden now, nope, we're changing course, and Fitzgerald is fired. I'd love to know what exactly changed other than social media pressure from the leadership team, because I think if we begin to cave, if people begin to cave on people who have such allegedly high character people like a Pat Fitzgerald or a Gary Pinkel because of what students are claiming without a true investigation, and we're caving to social media, I think that sets an absolutely dangerous precedent, and you better be real careful about which line you're going to toe there.
Yeah, that's well said. And you're talking about us getting there. I think we've been there for a while now. I think we're trying to get ourselves out of it. And each new scandal that hits, we just go through the same thing again. For me, a lot of what I watch with these things now is I watch them play out. I mean, they really play out like feeding frenzies. You just can't believe it. I posted Jim Phillips' statement about Pat Fitzgerald that he made in 2021 when Northwestern signed Fitzgerald to a 10-year re-up. I mean, he was going to coach at Northwestern as long as he wanted to, and it was a praise poem of Fitzgerald, of the man, of the character, of the on the field, of the off the field. And now here we are in 2023, and now the guy's name almost overnight is mud. Most people didn't even know about this investigation, the 6-month investigation. It hits. We're now just several days out, and all of a sudden Pat Fitzgerald is nowhere near the man we thought he was. He's a completely different person, and he's not the guy that we'd seen operating really since when he was a linebacker in the mid-'90s at Northwestern, at his alma mater. So I completely agree with that. The frenzies are frightening. Everyone jumps in, and here you've got yet another university president who's supposed to be the pillar of the university and the true north compass, and he doesn't know who to answer to. So I totally agree. To go from a 2-week suspension in the summer to the guys fired within a 3.5 or 4 day span is absolutely jaw-dropping to watch happen.
And to me, it makes me wonder if the presidents and athletic directors are there to cover their own ass, or they're there to actually be leaders in times of adversity. Because obviously, if you're going to defend someone up against these allegations, that they're going to be knives out for you. And if the easiest thing for you to do as a leader is to cave to the mob and then axe your head coach and think that all of this is going to go away, well, that might be just fine. But now we're starting to hear from players inside the current locker room, players who are recent graduates of Northwestern that are attesting to his character and the program that he built at Northwestern. And I don't think this is anywhere near over. And then you look at the firm that he just hired to represent him from a litigation standpoint. I think he's due somewhere around $42 million. I don't think this is just going to get swept under the rug. This is not going anywhere anytime soon, and I think the more transparency is actually a good thing, because people have to decide right now, especially in the sports media landscape where they are the fastest to throw people under the bus, at moment's notice like this, and they did to Pat Fitzgerald, that I hope that the people who are right there writing him off as a terrible human being and a racist are held accountable when all of the transparency comes to light. And I'll hold that to myself, too. I'll defend Pat Fitzgerald right now, and then if I'm proven completely wrong, I'll eat it. But I just hope that all of the people right now who are trashing a man who I think has an upstanding character, despite these allegations, the truth will eventually come out, I hope, because transparency is a good thing.
If we get the litigation, it will.
Yeah. Hopefully it does. Or if there's just a settlement, that would not do anything.
No, it wouldn't. But I think Fitzgerald has made a lot of money. I don't think he's a greedy man in terms of wealth. I think with this firm that he's hired and this process he wants to go through, this discovery, I actually think he probably wants as much of his name back as he can get as he wants the money. I'm sure he wants some, or if not all of the money as well. But I think he wants his name back. At what point does Fitzgerald's been on the scene since about 1995, and this is the first we've ever heard of anything like this. At what point does that count for a lot? At what point does an outpouring of support from current and former players weigh heavier than the qualms and upset of several? Well, it depends on what happened to the several, of course, and that's what we're trying to find out. But at what point do we reserve our judgment? So I don't know if I'm defending Fitzgerald per se, but I am defending his right not to be torn to shreds in public without knowing what happened.
Very fair. Very fair. I agree.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Just to be clear, Eduardo Soto, the guy who I'm referring to, and folks can read this he posted it on Twitter. It's an open letter to the president at Northwestern and the athletic director, but he started as an equipment manager and worked his way up. And towards the end of the first page of a multi-page open letter, he writes, Carl Richardson's actions, again, who was a player on the team, in the words that he has repeated to many of his former classmates and teammates, indicate that his real concern was not with alleged hazing events, but rather that he wanted to use something, dubious allegations, that Fitz had no idea about as a tool to get Fitz fired. This sort of maliciously misleading behavior is not something that Northwestern University should reward, regardless of the number of articles and opinion pieces put out by the media mob in a slow news cycle in mid-July. And that, I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, that's precisely what I'm saying. And, who knows what the leadership found, but just based on other things. I mean, hell, recently, what did we just have out at BYU? Where you had the volleyball player claim that she was being attacked for all these racism. They were just hounding her with racism.
With South Carolina, I think.
And
wasn't that who they were playing?
South Carolina and BYU. They go back and check the audio and video, and there's not one word of anything.
Not a shred.
Nothing that they said was true. And multiple people were sitting there going, people need to lose their jobs. It's just so weird how, people refuse to do their job and actually do just an ounce of investigative journalism to actually seek a kernel of truth in today's landscape. They're all about just having the hot take out there. And apparently in the sports media landscape, the hot take is just take down the guy who's the easiest scapegoat. That's a shame.
Yeah, it really is. It's we're dealing with kind of the dark side of human nature. There's the tribalism in us, and there's jumping onto moral crusades feels very good, and for certain people, it's irresistible. So it almost
that's right.
It doesn't matter what it is; it'll be one after the next, and they leave these things behind, like locusts that have stripped a landscape, and they don't even really care for the most part, except for the people who are personally involved. And whatever's left in their wake doesn't matter. There's always some new thing to be righteous about. So I don't know, with the media business we have these days, I don't know right now how we slow it down, because this is just what drives the all-important traffic, the eyeballs, the whole revenue system is stuff like this, the talking heads, the on-screen combat over this point or that point. So it's really hard to think. I don't know, maybe the thing we can do to get people to slow down with this is to remind them that there are actual human beings at the other end, that there are people who are affected by this. It's not just you bored in your office on social media. There's jobs, livelihoods, reputations, friendships, community, all sorts of stuff, and maybe it's worthwhile to find the truth first. I don't know if that'll work, but that's what I'd like to say.
Yeah, wouldn't it be interesting if libel laws started to really include social media posts?
Oh yeah.
I mean, you think you got a jacked up court system now, but it would be interesting.
Well, how would you sue? Jackwagon 6924. I mean, I don't know. I guess you'd have to figure out who they are first. Maybe people should stop posting behind blind walls and put their actual name on what they think. Put their real opinions out there.
Yeah, that would be nice. All that sounds great. I know over in Europe and England and stuff, they have very tight laws on social media and posts and stuff like that. And from what I see happening over there, we don't want to bring that over here.
No.
It would turn everything into a mess and screw up our First Amendment and everything else. So it's just kind of I think it's cultural right now more than anything. This is out in the culture. This is kind of what people are getting off on. So I don't know. Maybe we need to get people into some better hobbies or something.
I agree with you. Mark Schipper, Fifth Down College Football. Before we let you go, I just have two kind of broad questions. One about the landscape of college football. We've seen a lot of realignment. Certainly the future of college football is sort of a changing landscape as well. But what are your kind of big picture thoughts as we're not that far away from the start of the college football season here?
Yeah, well, big picture, not too far down the road, I think we're going to see a massive reorganization of the top of college football. I think we'll probably see a breakaway division of the top football schools and probably basketball in some way. A new governing model. I think the NCAA, unless they have a swift and rapid change of course, is going to become irrelevant to these big-time programs and their television contracts and how they operate. So I think we'll see that, and then it'll be about reorganizing the smaller teams below and how they're allowed to continue to participate and what kind of interaction there is. So I'm working on a college football book right now. That's what this whole Fifth Down College Football is about. And when I started this, I said we're about to enter a revolutionary moment in college athletics. And 6-8 months into my project, OU Texas announced for SEC, then UCLA USC to Big Ten, and all these Supreme Court rulings. So we're in the early stages of what I think is going to be a big revolution.
And lastly, from a local standpoint, Missouri. I don't even know what to think of this program. I'm so down on Eli Drinkwitz. I thought he was exciting when he came in, but the whole shtick of Eli, he likes Diet Coke and he's kind of a funny guy. Well, it loses a lot of its lure when you don't win football games, and then you get, a pretty boring brand of what was supposed to be the next offensive genius. So is there any hope as a Tigers alum?
Well, yeah, of course there's hope. Hope dies last, as the great Studs Terkel once said it. With Eli, he doesn't have a lot of momentum, and so much of college football coaching is momentum. So what you said is exactly right. He needs to win some football games. He needs to get people excited, and then he's got to get some players in who can do it. I have not seen a lot from Eli that makes me think he's going to be anywhere near the level of a Gary Pinkel or get Mizzou relevant on the national level. So I would say probably by the end of this season, maybe even before it's over, you're going to know about the future with Eli.
Yeah,
wow.
I think so too. I think this is a make or break year for him, even though at the middle of last season they gave him an extension, which is hard to fathom, but who knows? That's all sometimes meant for recruiting purposes. So when they go into the house, they say, well, he's going to be here for forever. Well, I don't know about that.
Right.
Last thing for you. What do you think's next for a guy like Pat Fitzgerald? I mean, hard for me to think. There have been a lot of college football players who have been snarled in a lot of different controversies. Bobby Petrino's back in the SEC as an offensive coordinator, for God's sake. So how long before Pat Fitzgerald is a strategist on Nick Saban's staff or something and then moving on to better things? Because by all accounts, he did some great things at Northwestern, but, this is a man who turned down a Carolina Panthers head coaching job at one point. He's been rumored for a lot of different jobs. I don't think it's going to be long before he's back as a head coach in college football.
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on what he wants to do. I think he'll probably, he's been in this grind. He got interesting timing. It was about this time in 2006 when Randy Walker suddenly passed away and Fitzgerald got the job in, end of June, early July '06. And now here he is out of a job in July 23 and someone else is going to have to take over. I think he'll probably, when he gets out of the fray, will want to take a little time off and think about what was and what he wants to do. But once he's done, and it will depend on what comes out with this lawsuit. It feels like he's going to be fairly exonerated. If his name is mostly cleared in this thing, and it turns out it was not quite the hellscape that some have made it sound, I think he will have opportunities to be a head coach again, maybe if he wants, maybe to do something in the NFL, something a little lighter than head coaching. But I don't think Fitzgerald is going into public exile and shame for the rest of his useful career.
I have to agree with you there. Mark, tell us about Fifth Down College Football.
Yeah, Fifth Down College Football. So that's the name of my website, my publication. I'm writing a book on college football. I spent 2021 on the road across the country. I called it the American Odyssey. I went coast to coast, best rivalry games, went back to the Ivy League, the old Big Three, Princeton, Harvard, Yale, and checked them out. And I'm writing a book, I'm writing a book on college football's place in American history and culture. It's uniquely interwoven in the American story. After the Civil War, you can't tell the story of the United States without college football. That's how significant this game has been to this country's history. So I want to tell that story, and I want to tell it before, as I said, the revolution hits and it changes forever. I kind of want to say what college football was, and then we're going to see what college football is going to become in the near future.
I thank you for coming on and doing this and having a legitimate conversation, whereas so many people are just so quick to find themselves in the groupthink and echo chamber. I applaud your efforts to maybe stay independent and wait for the facts to fully come down before you levy the axe on somebody's neck. It's nice to hear somebody has some restraint in that regard.
No, I appreciate you guys for having me on and for having the conversation. The thing is the more people who have these conversations and the more people who try to occupy space with these conversations and push the maniacal conversations to the fringe, I think the better conversations we have. People often engage in complex dialogue when they are engaged in it. When they're given the opportunity to go wild, they take the opportunity. So I was glad to be on with you guys today, definitely.
Our pleasure.
Great stuff. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, guys. Take care.
You as well. Mark Schipper. Check out Fifth Down College Football.